What's this? Another Dead by Daylight video? After finishing my recently released cover on why I think Springtrap sucks, it got me thinking more about Dead by Daylight in general. With a growing unrest boiling within the community, many of DBD's player base are beginning to realise that the game is actively falling apart at the seams. For a little background, I've both studied for and work in game development, having contributed to the Next Week at Freddy's project as one of 3 primary developers, which was made in the Unreal Engine, the same engine that Dead by Daylight operates in. This is to say I believe I have more insight than the average player in what's actually going on behind the curtain, and I've got to say my spidey senses are tingling. This game is fucked. Okay, to make this more digestible for someone without experience in game development, I have to explain a basic concept within game engines, this being the class system, specifically seen within object-oriented programming, which is what Unreal Engine uses. The class system, to put it simply, works in a parent-child structure. Developers start with a base class, the main parent of which all children are derivative from. In the case of Dead by Daylight, I'm completely certain that in early development, the devs decided that both Killer and Survivor would be derivatives of the same parent. This parent class, in the context of DBD, likely houses code for pawn possession, allowing keyboard and controller inputs to possess the units, which house the modular code for items, add-ons, and offerings. These are universal traits among all player characters within Dead by Daylight, Survivor and Killer alike. That's right, both roles, for all their differences, are from the same base class. The reason I know this is the case is because within the game's code, killer powers are actually treated as items. Yeah, like your medkits and flashlights. This could clearly be seen back in the early days of the game, where bugs existed that allowed killers to drop their power, and which made it possible to equip another killer's power onto someone else, such as the infamous Chainsaw Myers, by confusing the game as to which item the killer had equipped. As this has actually been confirmed by the developers, it raises serious implications about the flexibility and the stability of the foundational code the whole game is built upon. A long-term example of the inflexibility within the game's code comes with the perk Franklin's Demise, which for all intents and purposes has been a complete pain in the dick for the developers. Back in the day, when a killer hit a survivor, Franklin's would cause them to drop the item they were holding, and unless they picked it up within 90 seconds, it would be destroyed, straight up deleted from the trial. It's such an interesting idea. Why did they remove it? Well, that's because with the introduction of Pinhead, the devs realized that if a survivor was holding the Lament configuration, Franklin's Demise introduced the possibility of deleting Pinhead's power. Due to the inflexibility of the code, they couldn't just toggle a failsafe. For example, a property named Immortal could be made true or false within a child, which would prevent a specific item from being destroyed. But since something like this wasn't coded, due to the short-sighted nature of how the game was made, what can they do? The only thing they could do without spending time and money recoding items within the base class to introduce failsafes like this was to outright remove the feature from Franklin's that destroys the item. Franklin's was instead changed to drain the item's charges, which while not as effective as deleting it, was still a fair and somewhat equal compromise, which still achieved the same effect, making the item useless. It's a shame that a perk had to be nerfed due to the inflexible code the game was built on, right? Well, it's not over yet, because much later down the line, with the introduction of fog vials, once again, Franklin's became an issue with the developers. Due to the fogs introducing a new mechanic, an item without charges, this, of course, conflicted with the nature of Franklin's, and I assume would either cause the game to crash or cause nothing to happen at all. Now, this would be unfair if the fog vials were immune from Franklin's effects, while all other items lost charges. So, what can they do? Well, it seems to them the most fair solution was to just, again, nerf Franklin's, making it so the perk no longer drains charges from dropped items. This shows a clear rigidity in the game's code structure, which even back then was causing issues when it came to what was possible for behavior to do in terms of killer powers and items. Now, I want you to imagine that rigidity, and then apply it to the rest of the game. The game is progressively rotting from the inside out. With every update and addition, the game conflicts with itself even further, and specific foundational dependencies, like the direct tie between Killer and Survivor, cause more and more limitations. Unlike the whole shipper Theseus analogy, they can't just replace boards progressively until the game technically becomes a whole new ship. So many pieces of it are dependent on one another working as they currently are, it makes it impossible to modularly replace bits and pieces without causing severe butterfly effects. This game, for a more accurate metaphor, is that tangled marionette your relatives bought you when they went on vacation. It's nice and it technically works if you try hard enough, but it's not really worth the time and effort it'd take to untangle it. Due to the killer powers being coded as items, this severely limits what's possible in terms of killer powers, which is why we're seeing the creativity and uniqueness of every addition slowly beginning to stagnate. There's only really so many times you can modify an easy code idea such as spawning projectiles before no matter what you do with it, it just feels too samey. For example, take the Huntress. She's the basic form of a projectile killer. Wind up the hatchet and throw it. The longer you hold it, the more velocity the projectile will have. Then from this, they expand upon the idea of projectiles with the Clown. This time, the projectile upon impact spawns an AoE which when stepped into can grant status effects. Okay, that's a clever modification. Now we go down the line to the Death Slinger. The projectile now shoots out from the direct center of the camera view, and when hitting a survivor will pull them towards you. But this time, there's no wind-up mechanic, just immediately full velocity. Now we move on to Trickster, whose projectile also has no wind-up, but this time he has many of them which build up a meter, and with add-ons, they can bounce off surfaces. From this we get the Artist. Same thing with the wind-up, except you only get 3, and they go through walls, immediately giving a status to survivors. Then you get the Spring Trap, no wind-up, and when the projectile hits a surface, it spawns an AoE, basically a combination of the Huntress and Clowns effects, speaking from a coding POV, even if the status effects are different. You get the point, right? After a while, there's only so much you can do with a concept like a projectile. It injures, okay, now it gives status effects, okay, now it pulls you towards the killer, okay, now it bounces. You know, what more can you do? The same principle applies to teleporting killers. It's a simple ability in terms of coding which was first seen with the Hag. It was shown to work and was well received, and so it was expanded upon to where nowadays almost all new gen killers have one. But now it's getting to the point players are sick of anticipating the power of a new and creative killer might be, only to be disappointed when they learn it's going to be another teleporting killer with a projectile. This also infamously applies to the Dash killers, giving rise to the lovingly named Dash Slop. Hillbilly is the original Dash killer, and from him we now have the Cannibal, the Pig, the Demogorgon, the Oni, the Blight, the Mastermind, the Good Guy, the Dark Lord in his wolf form, the Houndmaster's dog, the Ghoul, and the Krasu's headlong flight. That's 11 killers with some form of I go forward with lots of speed. Where are the killers which can send survivors to other locations like the Halloween events? Where are the killers who have more complex secondary objectives other than go to my chest and use this item? Where are the killers who can crawl on the walls and ceilings? Oh yeah, about that. Due to the rigidity of the base code of this game, it's actually impossible to create a killer which can walk on anything besides horizontal surfaces, so don't expect anything like that. Ever. It's not happening. So what can behavior really do about all this? Well, it really depends on where your priorities are set. If it's about the real health of the game and the potential it has, then the best solution would be to simply just completely start from scratch. That's right, Dead by Daylight 2, or more like a remaster. The reason why this hasn't already happened is because not only would this likely result in players losing all their progress, cosmetics and paid DLC, it would also mean they would actually need to spend the money making a new game, which they're clearly unwilling to do. The second reason why I believe they will never do this is because, again, due to behavior's short-sighted nature, they likely didn't include any clauses anywhere in the contracts they sent out to their oh-so-coveted license holders, which stipulates that in the event of a sequel or remaster, they retain the rights to use the licensed characters. This means that they would need to reach out to every previous license holder to resecure the rights to those characters. Now, for some IPs, think Ghostface, Resident Evil, Chucky, and Five Nights at Freddy's, this likely actually wouldn't be too hard. It's clear behavior and those specific license holders clearly maintain a good relationship. But for the more stingy license holders, think Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Nightmare on Elm Street, and specifically Stranger Things, they have a snowman's chance in hell of getting those characters again. Behavior knows, especially these days, that licenses are pretty much the only thing keeping Dead by Daylight relevant, and without them, the game could possibly die or become so unprofitable it's not even worth it to keep it live. Not only this, but remastering the game means transferring and remaking thousands of cosmetics, charms, and whatever else. This could be done, of course, but the question is it worth it for behavior to do it? Especially when they've proven to consistently act with short-term gain in mind. And from their point of view, no, it's not worth it at all. It's safer and more profitable to just keep patching over the gaping wounds littering this slowly decaying game, and hope that the project file manages to cling to dear life as they patch another 2 GB of content into it. The long-term solution is obvious. They seriously need to remaster this game from scratch. Even if they use all the same models, textures, and assets, they can be updated down the line, but the more killers and survivors and content they add, the more impossible the solution becomes. They need to act now before they dig themselves an even bigger hole. But come on, we all know that's not gonna happen.
What's this?
Oh, that? That's just the nail that holds the entire building to the ground.
Very funny.
No, I'm serious. Deus misericordia nostri.